Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. I'm looking forward to talking to Jim Chu of Untapped. Jim, it's great to connect with you. I've been looking forward to this interview. Not only are you an entrepreneur, and I love talking to entrepreneurs, but you're doing great things in the world. You're the founder and CEO of Untapped, a global investment company that offers profitable data-driven opportunities for investors to finance high-growth businesses in emerging markets. But you are also a social building social enterprises in Haiti that provide clean water to over 200,000 people in underserved regions through hundreds of local entrepreneurs. Let's start there. I always like to start at the heart of the human being before we tap into the business. And so talk about that, because I think, it's giving in so many ways is receiving. And so just talk about, the heart of giving.
Yeah, well, the whole journey with Untapped actually even started with my philanthropy work and the social business work in Haiti. So a little bit of background: I spent most of my career in the tech world, the '90s and 2000s, both at big companies and investing. But I started doing philanthropy because I thought, well, if I really want to change the world, that's what you do, right? You do philanthropy and you volunteer and do all the great things. And so I did that, and it was actually right after the earthquake in 2010 in Haiti. And I donated to some water NGOs and I volunteered there. And I concluded pretty quickly that charity and aid, in particular in Haiti, wasn't actually changing things. It wasn't actually solving the problem. It was at best a band-aid. And most of the time, it was actually perpetuating the issues that were leading to the poverty and the stuckness, if you will. And
Right.
so, having been in business for 20 years, I said, let's let's turn it on its head. Let's focus on the customer. Who is the customer? It's not the donor. The customer are the people in Haiti who don't get clean water. And let's create a product or a service for them that they really want. And so
Yeah.
we turned it into a social business. And at its height, we were serving over 200,000 people a day with clean water. And that was just really the beginning of a very long journey to understand emerging markets, and perhaps even a personal or professional realization that there's a lot more to making impact than just donating your money or looking good at a gala. It's really
Yeah.
about helping entrepreneurs solve real problems and solving systemic issues and why they can't do that on their own.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, and I think maybe when people hearing, what you've done, it sounds so incredible, but to some it may sound like the law of proximity is so far away of what they can actually do maybe
Mm.
in their own backyard. So rewind that a little bit and make it just kind of, smaller to what people can actually do that does make a difference. Because everything doesn't, I'm a big believer, Jim, that everything doesn't have to be big to make a big impact. I mean, what you're doing is huge and making a great impact, and I love it. But for the person who's listening, what's one thing that they can do to make,
Mm.
an impact that also has a ripple?
Well, it's interesting because when I started this, I just wanted to donate some money to Haiti, right? It wasn't as if I wanted to, what our vision today is to empower literally hundreds of millions of entrepreneurs in emerging markets. But it really started with, oh, hey, let's donate some money and let's see what happens. But what I think happened, or perhaps my answer to your question is, I started learning about this thing. What is it? How do the things work in emerging markets? Why is it that so many people are poor? Why isn't that there aren't more entrepreneurs getting financed? I started learning about that problem and started chipping away at it in my own way. And it's a very, very long story, but it took me over 10 years to finally learn, that's what the problem is. But it took 10 years of being an entrepreneur in an emerging market myself and understanding the problem. So I do think one of the key things to start in terms of solving a big problem is to understand the little problems and understand them deeply, so that once you understand them deeply, you know what the solution is.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
oftentimes, the real deep problems are the ones that affect so many of us, whether it's hundreds of thousands or millions of us. And that's when you say, I get it. This is why I can't get a taxi. I'm going to start Uber. This is why I can't do this. I'm going to do this. And so what I realized was, entrepreneurs can't get financing for their businesses, no matter how successful they are in emerging markets. Let's fix that.
I love it. You bring up a topic that I love, which is understanding the little problems. I'm a big believer that everything compounds, and so the little things compound to really big things. As a business coach, Jim, and I work with solopreneurs, Fortune companies. I have hundreds of clients all over the globe, and what I find is, I'm really good at finding the little problems that they're missing. And maybe not because I'm so brilliant, but maybe because when they're working with me, it's that time that they take to actually take that space, that silence, that reflection time to talk about it. And then ultimately, collectively, it comes to the surface. And so finding the little problem is a lot harder than finding the big problem, because it takes extra time, consistency. It takes routine. It takes a habit of actually doing that. And so you were intuitively driven, right? It sounds like, by something, but how can someone dedicate to that routine of finding the little, right? It's like a little bit different, but I think it was Mark Twain who said, if I had more time, and Winston Churchill, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter speech. This is the stuff.
Yeah, I know for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would even perhaps extend what you just said. It's in the mundane. It's in the stuff that
Right.
isn't sexy, that isn't the stuff. It isn't about AI, or it isn't about generative AI. Hey, maybe it's just, how do you actually capture that data a little bit more cleanly?
Right.
And so I think it's so easy as an entrepreneur, whether you're a solo entrepreneur or running a fast growing startup or even a big company, to be focused on all these external factors. Okay, how does my company need to look in order to raise the next round? How do I sell to these customers very specifically? And like you said, you don't either, and I think it's two things: take the time, or the outside perspectives to be able to see some of the mundane things that are right in front of you.
Right.
That those details that you can change. And so I think I personally, and I try to do this, and I don't always do this, and I have to say that I admit to it, taking that extra time with people who are perhaps from the outside. Obviously, they understand business. They maybe understand your business more than you think. But then taking that time to run through your issues, to run through the things that worry you, run through the strategy you developed, and not to be defensive about the questions that people ask, but to say, let me think about that. And to really rethink everything that you thought you already figured out.
Right.
And I think that's when you don't need to do that every day. If you do that every day, then you drive yourself crazy. But you do need to do it on an often enough basis where you're challenging your assumptions, and you're always renewing what your strategy is and your approach all the time.
Yeah. And I think figuring out what your shelf life is for that is the key. A lot of times what I find is, when I work with, whether it's a salesperson, a manager, an owner, a C-level exec, Jim, we do anywhere between, depending on their position, kind of typically like a 1 to 3 hour deep dive. And then my coaching is 15 minutes a week or 30 minutes every other week. So it depends on the shelf life of it. And so typically it's just enough time before you fall backwards. And so I say that to kind of emphasize the idea that it doesn't take a lot of time. You just got to have the habit of consistency of opening up the time in your calendar. So I think we're talking the same thing. Yeah. But the intent of, I read a book a long time ago. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. I wish I could, but it was about kind of living on the plateau. It was called Mastery. The book was called Mastery. And it was called and it was called the great part about business. I'm going to Amazon it. I'll tell you who the author was. I can't. George something or other. George Leonard is Mastery: The Keys to Success and Long-Term Fulfillment by George Leonard. The book is great. And what it talks about is living on the plateau, right? Not getting too many highs, not getting too many lows, but living on the plateau. And to your point, it can be mundane to people, but that is, I think if we look at some of the key companies that that go from 1 comma to 2 comma to 3 commas to, you know, et cetera, in growth in their revenue, those are typically the ones that are getting a little more granular on the mundane.
For sure. And you know, I think going back to the mundane and going back to the stuff that often takes a step backward or retrogresses, I forgot the word you used. And one of the things that I think is highly underappreciated is organizational health.
Yeah.
Just getting a team aligned, trusting each other, working well together, understanding what everybody is doing. I don't think most companies, I should say, put enough effort and time and energy and cost into doing that.
Yeah.
You know, people do team building activities. Great. All right. But it's only surface level. How do you really, and you don't do it often, once a year, is that really enough to establish that trust and alignment? And so a lot of people see it as wasteful. Oh, what are you going to do? You're going to, you know, go to XYZ ski resort and hang out for 3 days with your colleagues. That's wasteful, isn't it? Yeah. Actually, I think those type of mundane / daily or regular things you need to continue to build on are so important for every organization.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that every quarter, or at least every half year, then you retrogress. Like, wait, I thought we were doing. Wait, hold on. I thought we're doing this. I don't. You know, you're an asshole. Can't work with you anymore.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much for it to regress to that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so important to do that ongoing work on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Right. Because that's where the work is, whether it's personal or business. The more you get inside and get comfortable with the mundane, you get comfortable searching for the little things. That's where really big things happen. I get some of my best, you know, and I hear this a lot from people. I hear this in a lot of books that I read, people that I'm talking to. I feel this happens to me. Sometimes I get my best ideas when I'm in the shower, right? Sometimes it's like, because you're not thinking about things, and that's where you got to listen. You know, you get a whisper of something, and that whisper,
that's me.
Yeah, right. I recently interviewed 12 kids. I saw you went to Stanford. I interviewed 12 kids from the University of Michigan. This is just a couple weeks ago. They're all in the entrepreneurial club, starting these amazing companies. But a lot of the through lines, Jim, were the same, where it was, we saw a market and something was missing and we didn't know why. So we built a company based on the missing part of that business or that industry. And some of them had already sold 1 or 2 companies. So it was really cool in the way that they're looking. So think community, what Jim and I are talking about right now. If you don't take time in the mundane, there are 20 somethings or under 20 somethings. And by the way, there's also 30 somethings and 40 somethings and 50 somethings like me who are also doing it. But right. And you, Jim, but the 20 somethings who are in college right now who were raised on technology, who know how to use everything under the sun, can build a major company overnight. Now they have to learn how to operations of the company and things of that nature. But anyway, so I think I love this talk. All right, let's talk about your company now, Jim. Let's talk about your company. Let's talk about Untapped.
Sure.
Thanks for all that you do in Haiti. It's beautiful work, and the philanthropy is great. Talk about Untapped. You know, it's as your website reads, the future of emerging market investing is here. You offer investors a fixed return while enabling businesses in emerging markets to scale. So let's reverse engineer from scale.
Yeah. So I think let's start with the problem. So the problem really is this big hole in the financing market in emerging markets. And when I say emerging markets, it's many, and it's incredible how universal it is. Whether you're talking about Indonesia or South Africa or Kenya or Mexico, there's microfinance. So if you want a very tiny loan, that's available. If you're a big company with a big project, you can easily get a loan, especially if you have the assets and the collateral and the track record. But if you're anywhere in between, and I joke, anywhere in between borrowing $500 to buy a cow or borrowing $10 million to build a power plant, you're out of luck. Yeah. The financing ecosystem doesn't really accommodate those who are trying to borrow $10,000, $100,000 outside the United States. Now, I think in the United States, You could argue that there's an unmet need as well, but there's a lot more met need than unmet. If you go to Africa, you can find businesses that have been making that can make 50% return on investment of any capital you give them. They still can't get a loan.
Yeah.
And so we saw that as a problem. We asked the question, why? Why is this the case? And we realized it wasn't because the business opportunity wasn't there. It was because of how the investment models were structured and how people were making these investments. So you have venture. Okay, well, venture is good for the winner-take-all asset-light software companies. Great. And then you have commercial banks that give the money to the big formal businesses with lots of collateral. I like to joke, you want $1 million? No problems. I'll lend you $1 million. Just show me you have 1.5 million. I'm happy to lend you $1 million. Right. And then you spend a lot of money and time paying lawyers to make sure that if you run away with my $1 million, I'm going to go after your 1.5 million. Right?
Yeah.
So, but if you're a smaller company, let's say you have revenues of $100,000 a year, which is a lot in Africa. Well, it's not worth it to lend to you, to go through that whole rigmarole to lend to you. It's just not. It's just not worth it. And so what happens? No one lends to them, or it's only the loan sharks that do. Or if you have a rich uncle in Canada, you get access to capital. And so we said, okay, this is a problem, and a lot of people know this is a problem, but how do you fix it?
Yeah.
And you can't. The world is the way it is, not because there's some evil person lurking in the background preventing poor people from getting capital. It's the way the world is the way it is because of the structures of the economy. And so unless you change how you lend to these small businesses, unless you change the underwriting process itself, you're not going to be able to lend to them appropriately. Yeah. And so we then saw this really interesting opportunity to say, look, all these businesses are digitizing, and they are turning their businesses into data generation engines to create lots of data, and they're collecting all their payments and all their revenues digitally. Why don't we, like what's happened in the US, do this type of factoring on their future revenues, but using their digital platforms? So yes, we'll give you a motorcycle to make money as a motorcycle taxi driver, but then we'll take the future revenues that you collect as a motorcycle taxi driver. And we'll in fact collect them through the motorcycle itself, so that we're not waiting for you to pay us. We just take the revenue straight off the top. So today, what we do is essentially that model. We call it smart asset financing. And we essentially give people revenue generating assets, depending on what kind of business you have. You could be a merchant that needs to chill your drinks, so you need a refrigerator, or you're a Uber driver that needs a car to drive. We provide those assets to you, and then we integrate digitally with your asset and the things that you do, and with your payment system, and we collect our repayments directly from your payment system. So that does a number of things. It obviously reduces default risk. Great. It also makes payment or repayment safer. And so we've created a scalable way of very profitably, we get yields above 20%.
Yeah.
Consistently and scalably investing in these small businesses. And so our vision is to be able to do this around the world and deploy billions of dollars to these small businesses, which I know, and by the way, this isn't a random number. We know that for every dollar of financing we deploy, we get $3.83 of local revenue generated every year for the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So if we're able to deploy $1 billion, that means we'll get $3 billion of value created in those economies.
It's amazing.
Think about that, right?
That's amazing. I mean, you're really, really making a difference. Financing high growth businesses in Africa and Latin America. I just want to read off your website. Sandra, I'm getting her name completely wrong, so I won't even say the rest of her name, but it's on your website. Untapped is making it possible for small investors like me to have access to these markets that wouldn't have otherwise, and to some exciting opportunities happening in Africa where I don't necessarily have a physical footprint myself. You're doing great things. So thanks for what you're doing, Jim. Thanks for what you're doing. Who's your ideal client?
Yeah, an ideal client for us on the investor side. I'll tell you both sides. So, ideal client, I think, is pretty clear on the emerging market side. It are companies with very profitable businesses or doing very profitable activities. Being a motorcycle taxi driver, that's very valuable in the economy.
Yeah.
Or building electric motorcycles, but because of the size of the business, they're just too small to get capital.
Yeah.
Highly profitable, highly scalable. That's ideal for us. There's a lot of those kind of businesses. On the other side, those who want to invest in emerging markets are those who are, I'm a big believer in purpose alignment. I don't want somebody who's not just because, hey, make 12%, dude. Look, you got to care. You got to care. You got to believe that providing capital to entrepreneurs in different parts of the world is going to make the world a better place. Why? Because it's going to create opportunity. It's going to create a more equal distribution of wealth so that we can all live better lives.
Yeah.
You have to believe that.
Yeah.
But then second, you don't want to just give your money away as charity. You want your money to work for you.
Yeah.
So your money could be sitting somewhere in a CD generating 6%. Well, we can help you double that.
Yeah.
Return, and we can help you double that return on a fairly short-term basis, 18 months.
Yeah.
Right.
That's great.
And so that's the kind that we like folks who are curious about emerging markets, want to see their money do good, but also want a strong return, and I would call it hard-headed business people.
Yeah. Good. I love it.
We don't want charity. We want people who are ready to deploy lots of money. Do good with it.
I love it. I sit on a board. I'm now on the executive board. I was on the board for 6 years. I'm now on the executive board. I'll be president in 10 years of an organization called Hebrew Free Loan. And we loan interest-free loans to people, to businesses, et cetera. For whether it's a roof or starting a company, we do these interest-free loans. But we are not a charity. We are partners because you have to pay the money back. And so we look at it that way. It's like, hey, if you need a loan, we're your partner. We're not a charity. So I love that whole mindset that you're not a charity. This is a partnership. So it's great.
And I just wanted to kind of add to what you're saying. I think that hard-headedness it matters, right? Even for our clients. We want people to think about this and feel confident that their money is going to go somewhere that is going to both have an impact, of course, but also make money back for them.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, the core belief in our business, which is until investing in or providing capital to emerging markets becomes a commercial venture, not just a charitable venture, that's when the needle gets to move.
Yeah, I agree. Empower people. I love it. All right, quick speed round, Jim. You ready?
Yes.
A book that's had the biggest impact on you.
Oh, I would say on a personal level, Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond, a fairly old book. My personal interest is cultural and linguistic and genetic anthropology. But on a professional level, The Advantage, great book about organizational health.
By Patrick. Patrick, is that Patrick Lencioni?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. All of his books are great. Yeah. I don't know if I've read The Advantage, though. I've read a bunch of them. I don't know if I've read The Advantage. I'm going to read it. So thanks for bringing that up.
I just focus on the mundane stuff of organizational health.
Oh, good. I'm going to read it. All right, cool. Thanks for recommending that. Sometimes you read like a bunch of someone's books, and then you just kind of think they're all the same. But I know his typically aren't, but I'm going to check this one out. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
You got to learn how to say no.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. Finish this sentence. One thing everybody can do to make a big impact, but start small is?
Listen.
It's a good one. Think community. Jim, thanks so much for being on the show. This was great. I love it for so many reasons. I'm a business coach and I work with successful people who are stuck all over the globe. And this podcast is a platform for me to bring on guests to help them continually get unstuck. So thanks so much for everything you shared. You said a ton of great stuff. I enjoyed the whole conversation and appreciate everything that you're doing. Think community. we talked a lot about getting kind of unstuck, but getting stuck in the mundane on a routine basis. The advantage, mastery, the book I mentioned earlier, everything we talked about. Pay attention, get granular to every element of your business. We're in a market and in a decade right now that is going so fast with technology, and then COVID fueled it. We're out of that, and then AI is now fueling it to even go even faster, amongst so many other things. So spend time block, put in your calendar time to just get stuck in the mundane. Jim, where can people connect with you if they want to learn more?
Yes, they can follow me on on LinkedIn and Twitter, but mostly on LinkedIn at Untapped Global or at Jim Chu at Untapped Global. Or you can go to our website at untapped-global.com and you can start investing in emerging markets today.
That's great. I love it. And Think Community, if you need me, you can reach me at jondwoskin.com. Thanks for listening. And if you know anybody who would enjoy this and benefit from it, please share. Jim, thanks so much. This was awesome. I loved it. All the best to you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.